At 2 a.m., a 58-year-old burglar lowered himself 60 feet into a dead elevator shaft. Beneath Hatton Garden waited London's Diamond Vault, sealed behind 20 inches of reinforced concrete and layers of alarms. The crew above him were even older, 6 pensioners, average age 67, hanging a heist on one Easter weekend. No one had breached that vault in living memory. Then something happened in the basement that changed the job completely. Brian Reeder was 76 years old. He had gray hair, bad knees, and a bus pass. He collected a state pension. He lived in a detached house in Dartford, Kent, with his wife. To his neighbors, he was a retired gentleman, quiet, polite, unremarkable. He was also one of the most experienced criminals in England. Reeder had been in the game for 5 decades. His record stretched back to the 1960s, when London's underworld still operated on handshakes and hard reputation. But his signature achievement, the one that earned him permanent respect in criminal circles, was the Brinks Mat case. In 1983, a gang broke into the Brinks Mat warehouse near Heathrow Airport and stole £26 million in gold bullion. The largest robbery in British history at the time. Reeder wasn't one of the men who entered the warehouse.
The blueprint fits.
But he was convicted in connection with the aftermath, specifically for his role in handling and laundering the stolen gold. He knew how to move the proceeds of crime. He knew how to disappear wealth. He had served time. He had returned to the world. He had, by all appearances, retired. And then, in late 2014, sitting in a pub in Islington, he had an idea. The Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company. He had known about it for years. Every career criminal in London did. A private vault in the heart of the jewelry district, holding millions in uninsured valuables. The building was old, the security was outdated, and every Easter, the entire operation shut down for 4 days.
The vault on Hatton Garden. Easter weekend, 4 days, no staff. We go through the wall.
The man sitting across from him set down his pint. Terry Perkins was 67 years old. He had known Reeder for decades. Perkins was old school, a safe cracker, a vault man, someone who understood reinforced concrete and locking mechanisms the way a surgeon understood anatomy. He read blueprints like novels. He could estimate a wall's composition by tapping it. In 1983, the same year as Brinks Mat, he was convicted in the Security Express robbery. £6 million in cash, stolen from a depot in Shoreditch, one of the largest cash robberies in British history. He had done his time. He had come out, and retirement had bored him senseless.
I've been looking at that building for years. The wall's the weakness. 20 inches, no more.
2 men, a combined age of 143. Between them, connections to 2 of the biggest robberies in English history. They should have known better. They should have stayed home. Instead, they started recruiting. Over the following weeks, Reeder and Perkins assembled a crew. Danny Jones, 58, a career burglar and fitness fanatic who ran every morning. He would handle the physical demands, the shaft descent, the heavy lifting. John Kenny Collins, 75, the oldest active member of the crew, a career thief who would drive the van and serve as lookout. Carl Wood, 58, a late addition, recruited to fill a gap, nervous from the start. And a 6th man, known only as Basil, who wore a disguise at all times and was not identified until years later. 6 men. Average criminal record, 3 decades. Average age, 67. They didn't have youth. They didn't have technology. They didn't have inside information. But they had something younger criminals didn't: patience. And a plan that replaced brute force with geometry. For months, the crew studied 88 to 90 Hatton Garden like a medical team studying a patient before surgery. Collins drove past in his white Mercedes Vito van, timing the security guard's schedule. When he arrived, when he left, how long the building stood empty between shifts. Reeder entered the building as a prospective customer, wandering the corridors with the casual curiosity of an elderly man. Noting the layout: stairwells, fire exits, the elevator, the basement access. Jones measured the elevator shaft from the ground floor, calculating the descent. On one occasion, Reeder lingered too long. A late-working jeweler emerged from a workshop on the second floor, briefcase in hand, and found Reader standing in the corridor staring at the elevator panel. Reader nodded politely. "Looking for the toilets," he said. The jeweler pointed down the hall and left. Reader's heart didn't slow down for 20 minutes. It was the closest they came to exposure, and they hadn't even started yet. They discovered something critical. The building's alarm system was monitored by a private security company, not the Metropolitan Police. On a standard weekday, an alarm trigger would prompt the company to dispatch a guard or notify police. But on Easter weekend, Thursday night through Monday morning, the protocol was different. The monitoring company would log the alarm. They would attempt to call the key holder. If no one answered, they would note it and wait until business hours resumed on Tuesday. 4 days. No staff. No police response. No one checking.
Easter, 4 days. Nobody checks. Nobody comes. We have from Thursday night to Sunday.
The equipment was procured over weeks, purchased and rented in small quantities to avoid triggering suspicion. The centerpiece was a Hilti DD350 diamond core drill, an industrial machine designed to cut through reinforced concrete and steel rebar. It weighed over 25 kilograms. Its diamond-tipped core bit could bore a clean cylindrical hole through composite material. Alongside the drill, angle grinders for cutting the vault's internal cage, crowbars for prying open safety deposit boxes, a Clark Metalwork hydraulic pump as a backup breaching tool, hard hats and high-visibility vests for disguise, walkie-talkies for communication, bin bags for the loot, and a wheelie bin to transport equipment through the building's corridors. The plan itself was elegant in its simplicity. Step 1. Enter through the street-level fire escape door. The crew had obtained access, though the exact method was never established at trial. Step 2. Disable the communal elevator on the second floor, preventing it from moving. Step 3. Open the shaft doors and descend to the basement via rope. Step 4. Drill 3 overlapping holes through approximately 20 inches of reinforced concrete, creating a space large enough for one man to squeeze through. Step 5. Enter the vault. Crack open every accessible safety deposit box, bag the contents, and haul everything back up the shaft. The plan depended on one critical assumption: the drill would cut through the wall. If it didn't, if the concrete was too hard, the rebar too dense, the bit too weak, there was no backup, no plan B. Just a basement full of elderly men with a broken machine and no way out except back up the shaft. All they needed was one thing every heist demands, and no plan can guarantee luck. On the evening of Thursday, April 2, 2015, the crew arrived at Hatton Garden in 2 vehicles. Collins drove the white Mercedes Vito van. The others followed in a second car. They were dressed as maintenance workers, high-visibility vests over dark clothing, hard hats, tool bags slung over their shoulders. In the jewelry district, where buildings were constantly being refurbished and security systems serviced, late-night tradesmen were unremarkable. They entered through the fire escape door on the side of the building. The street was quiet. Easter had emptied the district. The shops were shuttered. The offices were dark. The only witnesses were CCTV cameras recording silently, storing footage that no one would review for days. The crew moved through the building with methodical calm. Equipment was carried to the second floor.
I can't see anything.
The elevator was disabled, its power disconnected, its doors pried open on the second floor landing. The shaft yawned below them, a vertical tunnel of darkness disappearing into the basement. Danny Jones went first. He secured a rope to the elevator mechanism and lowered himself down. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for a man with broad shoulders. Metal cables brushed against him. His torch cast sharp shadows on the walls. Below, the basement corridor waited. Once Jones reached the bottom, the others lowered equipment. The Hilti drill, the hydraulic pump, cables, bags, crowbars, angle grinders. Reader, at 76, did not descend. He remained above, the architect, watching his blueprint come to life from a safe distance. In the basement corridor, Jones and Perkins positioned the drill against the vault wall. The spot had been chosen carefully, a section where the corridor ran directly adjacent to the vault chamber. The Hilti DD350 roared to life. The noise was immense, a grinding, screaming vibration that shook the corridor walls and rattled the pipes overhead. Diamond met concrete. Dust erupted from the bore point in a thick gray cloud that filled the corridor within minutes. The crew pulled scarves over their faces. The drill cut slowly, inches per hour through composite layers of concrete, steel rebar, and aggregate. The first hole took hours. A clean cylindrical bore, roughly 10 centimeters in diameter, punched through to the other side. Then the second. The plan required 3 overlapping holes, enough combined area for a man to squeeze through. But on the third cut, the drill jammed. The core bit caught on rebar at the overlap point. The motor strained. The bit wouldn't advance. The overlapping section was proving structurally different from cutting a clean single bore. The concrete between the holes was compressed, reinforced by the very rebar they had already cut through in other spots. They tried repositioning. They tried forcing. The bit was too worn. The motor began to overheat. Exhausted, coated in concrete dust from head to foot, their hands raw and their lungs aching, the crew faced reality. The vault wall had not been breached. 2 holes, but not 3. They could see through to the vault on the other side, but the remaining slab of concrete would not give.
We're coming back. I didn't come this far to leave empty-handed.
They retreated. Equipment was left in the corridor, too heavy to haul back up the shaft. They climbed the rope, emerged on the second floor, and left the building. Brian Reeder made his decision on the street outside. He was done. 76 years old. His back was finished. His hands shook. He had watched from above while younger men, younger being a relative term for 60-year-olds, had failed to break through.
I'm too old for this. You lot do what you want.
He went home to Dartford. The mastermind of the Hatton Garden heist had abandoned his own masterpiece. Reeder went home. The smart move, the safe move. The crew should have followed him. Instead, Terry Perkins picked up his phone. They were going back. On Saturday night, the remaining crew returned without Reeder. This was Perkins's operation now, the vault man who refused to accept failure. He had spent Fridays sourcing the one thing the drill couldn't provide: brute hydraulic force. The Clark metalwork pump, a hydraulic ram designed to spread heavy material by applying enormous lateral pressure. If the drill couldn't cut through the remaining concrete between the bore holes, the ram would push it in, crack it, shatter it, force it. Jones descended the shaft again, second time in 3 days. His muscles remembered the pain. His hands found the same rope burns.
We hit it right here.
But this time, the mood was different.
All right,
This wasn't reconnaissance. This was the final attempt.
We used the pump. We pushed through what's left. It'll go.
In the basement corridor, surrounded by concrete dust from Thursday's drilling, they positioned the hydraulic ram against the partially drilled section of wall. The ram's flat plate pressed against the concrete between the 3 bore holes, the weakest point. Perkins operated the pump. Pressure built. The ram extended. The concrete groaned, a deep structural sound that vibrated through the floor. And then it cracked. A section of the wall gave way, falling inward into the vault with a dull crash. Dust billowed through the gap. The hole was jagged, roughly 50 centimeters at its widest, just enough for a man to squeeze through sideways. Danny Jones was the first through. He dropped into the vault on the other side. For a moment, silence. Then his torch clicked on. The beam swept across the room, rows and rows of steel safety deposit boxes, floor to ceiling, numbered, locked. Each one a sealed container of someone else's secrets. Hundreds of them lined the walls in metal cabinets. Jones didn't have keys. He had a crowbar. He jammed the flat end into the first box and pried. The lock snapped. The drawer slid open. Inside, velvet pouches.
There's diamonds in here. Diamonds everywhere.
His voice came through the walkie-talkie, crackling with static and disbelief. After 2 nights of drilling, climbing, and failure, the vault had delivered. Over the next several hours, the crew worked through the vault systematically. Column by column, box by box. Jones pried them open while others sorted the contents, separating valuables from paperwork. They cracked open 73 safety deposit boxes. Diamonds, sapphires, emeralds, Gold chains, gold bracelets, gold bars. Watches, Rolex, Cartier, Breitling. Bundles of cash, pounds sterling, euros, US dollars. Some boxes held only documents, deeds, contracts, photographs. Those were discarded. Others held a lifetime's accumulation of uninsured wealth. Traders who didn't trust banks, dealers who preferred anonymity. The vault floor was littered with debris. Broken locks, discarded papers, empty velvet cases. The crew stuffed everything into heavy-duty bin bags, the kind used for garden waste. The bags were heavy. Gold and gems weigh more than paper. They hauled the bags back through the hole, into the corridor, and up the elevator shaft on ropes. It was brutal work. The loot was dense. The shaft was vertical. The men were exhausted. They loaded the bags into the white Mercedes Vito and a second vehicle. By Sunday morning, the crew had driven away from Hatton Garden with an estimated 14 million pounds in stolen valuables. The vault was empty. The alarm had triggered on Thursday night. But the monitoring company had logged it, called the key holder, received no answer, and waited. Easter weekend, 4 days of silence. Nobody came. They had done it. 6 pensioners, the youngest 58, the oldest 75, had cracked the diamond vault of London's jewelry district. An estimated 14 million pounds, the most audacious burglary in British history. All they had to do now was one simple thing: keep quiet. They couldn't. On Tuesday morning, the building's caretaker unlocked the front door of 88 to 90 Hatton Garden. He noticed immediately that something was wrong. The fire escape door wasn't fully secured. The elevator wasn't functioning. There was a smell in the air, concrete dust, metallic, stale. He descended to the basement. The corridor looked like a construction site. Gray dust coated every surface. Power cables snaked across the floor. And in the wall, a jagged hole, roughly the size of a man, punched clean through into the vault chamber. Inside the vault, devastation. 73 safety deposit boxes torn open, contents scattered, drawers pulled from cabinets and tossed on the floor. Velvet cases emptied, documents crumpled, the debris of 14 million pounds in stolen property left behind like gift wrapping. He called the police. Within hours, 88 to 90 Hatton Garden became the biggest crime scene in London. Detectives from Scotland Yard's flying squad, specialist officers trained in armed robbery and major theft, were assigned to the case. The flying squad began with the cameras. London is one of the most surveilled cities on Earth.
Thursday evening.
The Hatton Garden area alone was
That's
covered by
damning.
dozens of
Definitely
private
damning.
and public CCTV cameras. The footage from Easter weekend was pulled, cataloged and reviewed frame by frame. And there they were.
CT
The crew had been recorded, walking
Run
into
that
the
plate.
building on Thursday evening in high-vis vests and hard hats. Walking out in the early hours of Friday, covered in dust. Returning on Saturday night. Leaving on Sunday morning with heavy bags, loading those bags into a white Mercedes Vito van parked on a nearby street.
They walked straight past the cameras, didn't even try to hide their faces.
The van's registration was traced through ANPR, automatic number plate recognition, cameras positioned on roads throughout London. The registered owner, John Kenny Collins, 75 years old, of Islington. From Collins, the thread unraveled. Phone records showed connections to Perkins, to Jones, to Reeder,
Target
to
is moving
Wood.
east on 5th Street.
The flying squad
Requesting
did not
backup
move immediately. They watched. They listened. Phone taps were authorized, and what the detectives heard astonished them. Instead of going dark, destroying evidence, separating, establishing alibis, the crew kept talking. They met at pubs. They argued in cars. They discussed the loot on open phone lines. Danny Jones talked about where he had hidden his share. Collins complained that the division wasn't fair. Perkins discussed individual gems he was trying to value. They spoke with the casual confidence of men who had committed crimes before surveillance existed and had never updated their tradecraft.
I've put mine somewhere safe. Somewhere nobody looks.
For 7 weeks, Scotland Yard listened, watched, built a case that would be almost impossible to defend against. Every pub conversation, every phone call, every drive to a lockup, photographed, recorded, cataloged.
DNA evidence
On May
placed him at
19,
the scene.
2015, 7 weeks after the
Walking away is
heist,
not
the
the same
flying
as
squad
innocence.
struck. Coordinated dawn raids across London. Simultaneous. 7 teams, 7 addresses. Doors breached before sunrise. Brian Reeder was arrested at his home in Dartford. Despite walking away on night one, his DNA had been found on equipment left in the basement corridor. He had planned it. He had been there. And the law didn't offer credit for quitting early. Terry Perkins was arrested at his flat. Danny Jones at his home in Enfield. John Collins in Islington. Carl Wood at his address. They were still in their pajamas. Most of them had jewels and cash in their homes, in kitchen drawers, under beds, in cupboards. But the bulk of the haul remained missing. They had been watched from the moment they drove away in that white Mercedes. Scotland Yard hadn't rushed. They had waited, let the crew talk, and built an airtight case. Now came the reckoning.
Mr. Jones, are
Under
you ready to tell us
interrogation,
what happened
Danny
that night?
Jones cooperated. He led detectives to Edmonton Cemetery in North London. There, beneath a marble memorial slab near the back of the grounds, they found a blue plastic bag. Inside, approximately £4 million worth of gold jewelry, loose gemstones and sapphires. Jones had buried his share of the Hatton garden haul among the dead, a hiding place he believed no one would ever search. It was the single largest recovery from the heist, and it was still less than a third of the total. The trial opened at Woolwich Crown Court in November 2015. The evidence was overwhelming. CCTV footage showed the crew entering and leaving the building. Phone taps captured them discussing the loot. DNA placed Reeder at the scene.
We present the CCTV
Collins's
footage
van
from
was
8890
photographed
Hatton
outside the
Garden.
building
This
multiple
vehicle is
times.
directly linked to these
The recovered
items,
jewelry
clearly
matched items
identifiable by the
reported
owners.
missing from the vault.
Find the defendants
Brian
guilty as
Reeder, Terry
charged on all
Perkins, Danny
counts.
Jones, and John
This court
Collins pleaded
sentences
guilty
you
to
life
conspiracy to
imprisonment
commit
without
burglary.
parole.
Carl Wood and another associate stood trial and were convicted. The sentences were handed down in March 2016.
The court
This was a
finds you
staggering
guilty as
burglary,
charged.
a burglary of the
I
most
hereby
audacious
sentence-
kind, committed by men of a certain age who should have known better.
Brian Reeder, 6 years and 3 months. The man who had planned the entire operation and walked away on night 1. His DNA on the
Charge
drill
of
equipment
grand
was enough to
larceny.
seal his
This
fate.
court sentences you,
Terry
Mr.
Perkins,
Perkins,
7
to a term
years.
of 7 years
The
in
vault
state
man whose
pen-
stubbornness
having
had driven the
considered
crew back
evidence
for a
and the
second
jury's
attempt.
verdict, I
Danny
hereby
Jones,
sentence you
7
to a
years.
term of
The
20
muscle who
years in-
descended the shaft and hid millions in a graveyard. John Collins, 7 years. The lookout whose white Mercedes had led police to the entire crew. Carl Wood, 6 years. The reluctant recruit who had panicked during the heist. Terry Perkins was found dead in his cell at HMP Belmarsh on March 27, 2018. He was 69 years old, heart failure. He never completed his sentence. The vault man who refused to accept failure on night 1, who dragged the crew back for a second attempt, died behind the kind of wall he had spent his life breaking through. Brian Reeder was released in 2018, gaunt and diminished. He returned to Dartford. Danny Jones served his time. Collins served his time. Carl Wood served his time. The mysterious sixth man, Basil, was eventually identified as Michael Seed, a small-time crook and electronics specialist. He was arrested in 2018 and convicted in a separate trial in 2019. Of the estimated £14 million stolen from
We're still
88 to 90
actively
Hatton
searching for the
Garden,
remaining 10
only
million.
approximately £4 million was ever recovered. The remaining $10 million in diamonds, gold, sapphires, watches, and cash has never been found. No one has come forward. No fence has been identified. No stash has been located. It sits somewhere in London, in a lockup, a wall cavity, a safe deposit box in a different vault, buried in another graveyard, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to collect it or waiting for everyone who knows its location to die. The building at 88 to 90 Hatton Garden has since been demolished. The company closed. The vault no longer exists. But the hole, the one the pensioners drilled and rammed through 20 inches of reinforced concrete to create, endures in legend. 6 men chose to prove that age was no obstacle to ambition. They were right. It wasn't age that defeated them. It was a white van, a pub conversation, and the simple truth that in a city of 6 million cameras, The only people who didn't see them coming were themselves.